make just a small follow-up on that
It's
question.
okay. It's okay.
The example you gave about, I think, is it National Council for Higher Education and the candidate Rwashande. We are talking about transparency. I don't know whether some of you have seen it in the papers, but for me, I have not seen it. We saw a certificate of Rwashande for having got a certificate of UPDF in 1982. Did you see it also in the media?
Yes, we did see it, Professor.
Yes, but the Electoral Commission and UNEB have not come up to clarify that we made a mistake or something like that, because there was no UPDF in 1982. There was no UPDF in 1982. UPDF came after 1995 Constitution. Yes. By then it was Uganda National Liberation Army.
Yes.
So if they mistook Uganda National Liberation Army with UPDF, they should at least come out and clarify. But they have kept quiet, and we in the public have remained with that impression that the National Council of Higher Education wrote a certificate, wrote a letter, a statement to UNEB to say that Rwashande had a certificate of UPDF before UPDF was formed.
Yeah.
So why doesn't UNEB and the Electoral Commission come out to make a statement, and they leave this issue hanging? It appears as if National Council also may have done it deliberately to wash themselves off and say he got it from UPDF when actually it was Uganda National Liberation Army.
Remiaga is a good example. Sech Kubo came and said people who had signed for Colonel Rwashande were not exactly voters from Remiaga. They had come from another constituency. And now Electoral Commission is saying we are investigating to find out whether it's true or it's a lie. And so when the institution begins saying we are investigating to see it's true or a lie, if you read even the New Vision, the Monitor story today has carried the same thought process. I think legally that can also be taken on if the Electoral Commission does not convince us that what was done is credible. Electoral Commission can be sued in its own capacity for having let people who should not be on the register sign for particular candidates and not other candidates, and not being fair and not having a level playing field. Because the judges have been clear in all the court rulings that I referenced. They said issues of a level playing field are critical to a credible election. Issues of voter education are credible to an electoral process. In fact, for me, the one that I want decolonization to take on immediately is the question of voter education. We have hardly had any voter education in this electoral cycle that we're going for. And yet the judges said that if there is no voter education, then the voters will hardly know how to participate, especially the new voter. So I want Electoral Commission to be sued because it is their mandate to carry out voter education and to accredit credible civil society organizations to carry out the voter education. So why haven't they done it? So it's not an end in itself to see these injustices being meted out on people, but the first place and the first call of law is that the aggrieved party must be willing to come to court and lodge a complaint. What happens, unfortunately, is many times after they have received money or they have been talked to, then they don't want to come to court. Then, of course, the case might not stand the test of time.
As a legal practitioner, what can be done at the next elections to prevent aspiring candidates from undergoing fraud at UNEB and NCHE? If you may, as you said, you'd want to have them running. Miss Ayevare Flavia, thank you once again. I don't know if that's a sister to Dan. We are not sure, but thank you so much, Miss Flavia, for reaching out and to us. Asks Miss Charity once again, how can UNEB ensure a level playing field? How can UNEB ensure a level playing field? Of course, this answer could have best been answered by a UNEB official, but we'll, as I say, take it in stride and deal with what we have. And of course, I want to believe we have tested and proven brains before us to give that question a very good answer. Then, what are the implications of such impunity as seen? What are the implications of such impunity as seen? I think these questions can also cut across to Professor because they are really open. What are the implications of such impunity? And maybe for Professor, I'll just add, with your experience, having witnessed a lot of incidences across the continent of Africa, I mean, you could help us answer that question, because of course implications, we're looking at very, very dire situations like what has happened in Tanzania. So yes, we would like to listen in, and you could maybe answer those as I continue to gather them. Please keep them coming. They're not just coming in at once. We continue so that we could also gather others. Thank you so much, members. Kindly proceed, dear panelists.
Thank you, Robert. What was the name of the first person?
Mudoy Anthony. Mudoy Anthony.
So thank you, Anthony Mudoy, for the question that the next elections, what would they look like for fraud at UNEB and UNHCA? So the question does ask, we just want to let this fraud be. And in my view, I think we should not let it be. We just had Mkans or Jet telling us, this microphone I'm about to drop, it's interfering with the radical new bar.
We're sorry, we're digitally transformed. There's just a lot around you. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay. So, one, if a disclaimer is given with a letter, that is a ground for a legal suit against the institution that gave a disclaimer and at the same time issued a letter. So UNEB should be held accountable and UNEB can be sued. And in my view, young lawyers should not just sit down. Jet Tumwebaze, they told you when he was still at campus, he took on a case in court to do with elections. So if you want to have a name and you've been sitting there and wondering, where do I start from because the lawyers are too many, come join other legal brains, go to court on a public interest litigation, and let's have this resolved. Because when the courts sit, number one, they'll be able to define for us, again, the mandate, which we already know, but the mandate of UNEB and the mandate of the National Council for Higher Education. They will be able to apportion liability in as far as credibility of elections is concerned. Because you know these things, we just seem to talk about them and we want to pretend we are holding credible elections when we are not living to the standards of credible elections. In the West, they've already achieved credible elections because they are not talking about academic qualifications in the first place. They have the academic qualifications by the time you're standing. But for us, we have people who have forged academic qualifications and then they are being supported by institutions and then perpetuating to participate in processes that the Electoral Commission is calling free, fair, and transparent. Are they? Are they? If they are not, let's go to court such that for once we have precedent. You see why we have precedents about all these issues, like now we have precedent on bribery, we have so many cases that have been decided on bribery. We know how to define bribery, we know when it happens, we know who is a victim, we know who is liable, because judges have defined these things for us. So this would be a very good case. My advice to you, Mudoy, is let's go to court. Get a few young lawyers together with Electoral Commission lawyers and we go to court. Second one, Ayebare Flavia, how can UNEB ensure a level playing field? Now, first and foremost, the mandate of UNEB, maybe let me go back here and try to remind UNEB of its own mandate. UNEB has rankings. UNEB has a system of rankings where it ranks academic qualifications to see if an academic qualification equals to a certificate, if an academic qualification equals to what is acceptable in Uganda's ranking systems. Those rankings were established by UNEB itself. So UNEB owes us a duty of care. That is where we start from, my dear Flavia. They owe us a duty of care, that they will ensure that whoever participates in the process, if they were asked to verify, they are the institution that is liable for unverified documents that end up allowing candidates who are not qualified to be in an electoral process to run in an electoral process. So we need to have 1-2 cases of these people, and then we proceed to court. I don't know why the Remiaga MP, former MP, Theodore Sechkubo, decided to steer clear of this process. He's still an MP. His term is almost out. These ones are campaigning, so we are saying bye-bye to him. So Theodore, I don't know why he wouldn't help us with such a case. It would be very good for him to go to court and get many people join into this case, and then we get the judges to pronounce themselves. This would be a very low-hanging fruit for the judges. You know, these days they're also looking for some low-hanging fruits, seeing that they fear the political cases, the ones that Professor Ndebesa said, we are an oppressed society, and the institutions themselves are oppressed, and they fear to speak loud. But since we have a radical new bar, Ayebare, I also want to encourage you to take on this. Join the radical new bar, and let's see how to get UNEB to understand what it means for them to have not leveled the playing field for candidates. The one on implications, Professor, they've said, take it on. Implications and impunity.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mudoi, you asked how can UNEB have a level playing field? Yes. Okay. But anyway, somebody asked about how can UNEB have a level playing field?
Ayebare.
Ayebare?
Yes.
He was here. Where has he gone?
No, this one, the one
She's
online.
online.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes. There are very many things that they can do, but let me point out one of them. Why doesn't UNEB publish in the public media those equivalents of O level and A level, especially of A level? Because I think they are somewhere in the electoral laws and maybe in the constitution, I don't know, and acts. They say they must be talking about how a certificate can be equivalent to O level, A level. I think I want to guess that you must have done O level at least, and that course you have done must have lasted maybe more than 9 months. It's in the UNEB Act. So how many months? How many months? So we are not sure, but let them be published so that we know. Because somebody goes for a 2 months course and comes and says they have completed the HSC, equivalent. For a 2 months course,
Yeah.
why did they put these qualifications? They wanted to see that the individual has the capacity to appreciate the debate when he goes to parliament, isn't it? Now, if you go for a drills course in the field, in the bush, for 2 months, does that make you qualified enough to debate in parliament? I think that is that was what they wanted. So let UNEB publish those equivalents so that we can see them very clearly. What are the implications? What are the implications of having these conflicts that don't seem to be having fair attention. I don't know how many of you have read a book. There is a whole book with a title, Democracy Kills. I think I used to have a copy. I don't know whether I have it somewhere. Democracy Kills. And what that author meant is that these competitions can lead to wars, can lead to tension, can lead to conflicts that may result into violent conflicts. Therefore, we have to be very sensitive. Those of us who are in certain responsible positions of government, the Electoral Commission, the NEP, National Council for Higher Education, and the courts should be sensitive about issues of elections and not just go around making bad jokes about them. And a National Council should quicken, if I can use that word, quicken the process of responding to inquiries by the Electoral Commission. And the Electoral Commission should equally do that, and the laws, the judges should equally do that. Because if you don't do that and you are overtaken by events, it is like the 1980 elections, some MPs, some candidates took the case to court in 1980 or thereabout. Some of their cases had not been judged until Ruto took over in 1985. Surely, is that justice, you lawyers? Justice must be seen to be done and must not be delayed. So let those institutions move very fast and not consider even trivial issues, because these are very big issues. So in my opinion, UNEP should respond in real time. And finally, to repeat myself again, democracy kills. It can kill democracy, or these exercises like elections can kill democracy, but it can kill people. It can kill nations. Elections are an existential threat to national integrity and security. Can I repeat that one?
Yes, please.
Elections can be an existential threat for the integrity of the nation and security, more so in banana republics.
Thank you so much. Professor Olupot Ivan is asking, what structural reforms would make UNEB a true guardian of democratic opportunity rather than a filter of privilege? What structural reforms would make UNEB, and maybe you can add Electoral Commission, a true guardian of democratic opportunity rather than a filter of privilege? That is from Olupot Ivan, and we want to thank you to continue and for all that you're doing with us and standing with us. And a question from Ndagire Precious. It reads, the 2021 election saw internet shutdowns and tally controversies. How does the EC rebuild trust after such incidents? That is Ndagire Precious. Thank you once again. She says the 2021 elections, which I believe Ms. Charity also observed, saw internet shutdowns and tally controversies. How does the EC rebuild trust after such incidences? And one from Esayet Gloria. Thank you, Gloria. It's about technology and transparency. Should Uganda introduce an independent audit of elections before they are declared? Question, should Uganda introduce an independent audit of election results before they are declared? Thank you very much, Gloria. Please, if you don't mind, take those three and we can see how to proceed kindly. Thank you.
Okay. The first question is, what structural reforms should UNEB and EC undertake as guardians rather than those that demote democracy? One of the structural reforms, and I will talk more on the side of EC, but one of the structural reforms that should happen to UNEB is, one, you should not ask for exorbitant fees. That is an urgent structural reform that is needed. You cannot be there and just wake up and decide it is 300,000 to verify my certificate for O-level and 300,000 to verify my certificate for A-level. What is the premise? Where did you start? How did it come about? Secondly, that the Secretary of UNEB should realize that they work on behalf of Ugandans. Because if you look at our constitution, all of it is crafted on behalf of Ugandans. Every institution does exist to serve Ugandans. So even UNEB does exist to serve Ugandans in as far as academic qualifications are concerned. Those are key reforms for that institution. Now the Electoral Commission, that one has thousands of reforms that me as a person, number one, wants. The selection of electoral officials should be more transparent. It shouldn't be the president appointing them. We should have a more representative way of appointing electoral commissioners, such that the electoral commissioners do not feel that they are indebted to the president and to please the president, but rather know that they are there to serve all Ugandans. Now, most of the times you'll find that they have to toe a certain line, and sometimes they look like they are not in charge of the process. Then when they look like they're in charge of the process, they look like they're being unfair to other political players. Electoral to all. They're supposed to espouse justice. And you've been that where there is no justice, there is no peace. So for me, the first reform is the way electoral commissioners are selected, and then their term of office should only be the 7 years, nothing like extending those 7 years for another 7 years to make them 14. Because by the time you make them 14 years, somebody is tired of seeing injustice meted out by that team of commissioners. Commissioners should serve 7 years, that's it, and leave. That is the second reform that I need of the Electoral Commission. The third one is that Electoral Commission should leave to their billing of providing information to citizens during elections. I will tell you that some observers have been told you will not observe Kampala and Wakiso. All local observers almost do not have accreditation to observe Kampala and Wakiso. But why would Uganda be blocked from observing Kampala and Wakiso? Okay? Because you see, for Kampala, one of the things that happened in Kampala is that they are changing the number of polling stations within Kampala. The reorganization of polling stations happened, yes, but it didn't end. And up to now, Electoral Commission is reorganizing polling stations within Kampala. That is the first thing which calls for us to be suspicious. Why? Where are they reorganizing polling stations within Kampala? If you will recall that in the past election, most of the results that were not announced were within Kampala and Mukono. Why? Because the Electoral Commission said goons came and distracted the electoral processes. What is the likelihood that the same thing could happen in the coming 2026 elections? And yet the observers will have been kept away from Wakiso and Kampala. Is anybody thinking like I'm thinking? Those are reforms that are required for the commission. They need to be more transparent. They need to be more people-centered, because elections are organized for citizens. And the right of citizens to vote is sacrosanct. It is revered. It is a right that is hinged on choosing a representative of your views. So it is a very important right, which I think that the Electoral Commission should not just be left to run at their whims. They should do it in consonance with what the citizens of Uganda want. Ndagire asks about the internet shutdown. I think that when those structure changes happen within the EC and the UNEP, then there will be guardians rather than people who are demoting or putting down democracy. Ndagire Gracious says internet shutdown happened in 2021 and there was tally controversy. I'll tell you that in Kenya, after this last election of Raila Odinga versus Ruto, there was a lot of tension. People were not sure who was going to be declared the winner. And even the electoral body was under the spotlight. They were not confident enough to announce, and they didn't know what was going to happen to the public. So what happened? They made sure every citizen could access the results from the polling station. So from the polling station where you voted from, you knew the results that had happened there. And if you wanted to go and pick all the results within the constituency or even the district, you were free to do that because the results were displayed at the polling stations immediately they had been announced. There was nothing like, you give us 10 days, you give us 5 days, you give us 3 minutes, you give us 20 minutes. No, immediately they had been announced, they were published for any citizen who wanted to have their phone, take a picture and tally. Now in Uganda, they tally and keep away information from you and say, give us a week, give us 2 days, give us 3 days. And these things happen. And sometimes they give you block results coming from a particular region. Every time there is transmitting of results and results are given in block nature, then they cannot be trusted. Once results are not trusted, no matter what you do as Electoral Commission, even if you announce them, people will contest them in their hearts. They may not come out to protest. They may not pour out on the streets, but they will know that you cheated them. Now, what is important is to make the process as transparent as possible, such that they are also acceptable as much as possible. Why not follow that trend of where at the polling station I know my result and I can still see my result at the National Tally Center being reflected the same way it was at the polling station. That's one of the things that helped Kenya not to go to war. So, for me, a more transparent process for transmission of results, just like the judges ruled in 2016 and in 2006, I think that process should be more transparent. Internet shutdown, that one, it has always happened, and I can almost bet that it's going to happen again in 2026. Why? The government will raise the question of security and they will shut down the internet because people will be posting different results from their polling stations, and the moment they begin to see results going up and certain people winning and people tallying for themselves, they will shut down the internet. Now, the internet is a human right as of 2020. And so it is a violation of human rights every time the internet is shut down. And I think that if the internet will be shut down again in 2026, this time we'll have 3 precedents on when government shut down internet, and we can take them on for violation of human rights. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those striking insights. We take them in good faith. Yes, Professor.
Quickly. The callers have asked, or the respondents have asked very pertinent questions. Unfortunately, I'm afraid we don't have many answers. What structural reforms can be done on UNEP and the National and the EC? I think Charity has mentioned some, but in my opinion, there is no need for structural reforms per se, except the appointment of the Electoral Commission. The appointment of the Electoral Commission should be done on TV, like they do in Kenya. In the newspapers, all of us, and me and everybody who thinks can do that job, we apply, there is shortlisting, the candidates go and speak on TV, people ask questions about their integrity, because there are certain integrity issues about some members of EC. Secondly, some members, commissioners of EC, were heads of parties. If you are chairman of a party, how can you be neutral in this case. So that is what I would say about EC. About UNEP and National Council, I think this is not a structural question. It is a question of intimidation. I know they are intimidated. They want the job. Those members know what they are doing, but they know that they can jeopardize their jobs if they write the right things. That's why they are hiding under their tables. Somebody is asking for a correction and you are hiding under your table. That means they are. So I don't know. So the reforms should be in the internalized operation. There is internalized operation. Finally, I want to say that the issues of elections are political issues, are more political issues than electoral issues. And as far as Uganda is concerned, the current government of Uganda is concerned, it is a liberation government. Somebody may say, so what? All post-colonial liberation governments in Africa or liberation governments in Africa, be it Mozambique, be it Rwanda, Uganda, Sudan, Ethiopia, Eritrea, those post-election governments have got an entitlement mentality. They have an entitlement mentality. Whatever you want to say, they say we fought. And with that mentality, with that attitude, with that disposition, I don't see how liberal government is going to survive in such a countries. I heard Kahindo Tafire speaking. He was on video, speaking in Runyankore, in vernacular. He was saying, "Munimba nta kuzaruwero nkarwana cyaguranya kisha kaba president one." In other words, out in Rwero, there is no way people like Chaguranyi can be his president. Now,